The Denver Nuggets overnight just decided to absolutely hit the big red button, self destruct, and they decided to fire both their GM and their head coach in the exact same day, just like minutes apart. Okay, like the news dropped minutes apart. The first tower hit, then the second tower hit. Okay, that's how bad it was. And well, it's kind of just a very polarizing story because there's really very hard to see why they did it now. Like the reports about it said there was like a cold war forming between the GM and the head coach. And yes, I can understand firing one of them and like to get rid of the problem and make a better relationship between a new GM or a new head coach, you know what I'm saying? But like to fire them both right before the playoffs makes zero sense, especially when you're the fourth seed in the West with a 50-32 record. Like to do that literally weeks before the playoff, not even like a week before the playoffs when they did it, and caused an absolute media firestorm, caused so many distractions around the team because of it, is just insanely bad timing. Now, yes, I know they're 3-0 in their last three games since doing it, but almost every team, when they fire a head coach and get a new one, they always rally around the new guy at first, but usually it kind of falls apart after a while. And in my opinion, this situation is no different than a normal situation. And I think it's actually going to be worse for the details I'll be getting to later in this video and why I have pretty much zero faith in David Adelman to be the interim head coach and really bring them to any success this year in the playoffs at all. So if that does sound interesting to you in this video, please watch it all the way through. And without further ado, let's get right into this video. So the first thing I want to get into this video is going to be basically what their current situation is now that they have decided to fire their head coach and GM. And it's going to be mainly focusing on them firing Mike Malone, their head coach, because that's going to impact them a lot more short term than their GM would. Because really, their GM didn't have much to do left at this point of the season, and he was probably focusing more on the offseason to come. So I'm going to be focusing more on why I think it was such a big deal that they fired Mike Malone and how it's going to affect them very, very negatively, as they now find themselves in a situation where they have a Nepo baby in David Alderman as their head coach going into a playoff series against the Los Angeles Clippers, who are not any worse than you. You'll have the exact same regular season record. You probably have more talent on your team just because you have Jokic on there, but it's not by a mile, because I mean, a healthy Kawhi and a healthy James Harden plus Norman Powell, Zubac, they probably have a deeper team than you. Plus, they have Ty Lue, who's one of the better coaches in the entire NBA, and you're going to be having Ty Lue versus Mr. Nepo himself and David Alderman. And the reason I keep calling him a Nepo baby is because of a few different reasons. Because let me give you his coaching experience before ever making it to the NBA. The only head coaching experience he had before making it a leap all the way to the NBA was him being the head coach of Lincoln High School in Portland, Oregon, where they did have a record of 81-54, which is a 60% winning percentage. And I think he coached there from 2006 to 2011, at least according to his Wikipedia page. But I don't think anyone would say any coach that just has less than like 300 games in high school, didn't coach in college at all, was a okay head coach. Like 60% isn't like insane, but it's not bad either. It's pretty solid. I don't think anyone would argue that that guy should be an NBA coach. Well, in 2011, he would go on to become the player development coach of the Timberwolves. So you might be like, now how did that happen? How did he possibly go from a 81-54 record in a high school coaching job to getting to be a player development coach in the NBA for the Timberwolves? Well, that is because his father, Rick Adelman, was the head coach of that team, and now the Nepo baby name makes sense, okay? Because Rick Adelman was a decorated player and coach in the NBA for years, and he is 100% the reason why he got that job for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, some of y'all might be thinking, well, yeah, but there's a lot of nepotism in the NBA, and you would be 100% correct in saying that. But in a lot of those Nepo babies that made it to the NBA ended up being pretty damn good players or coaches. And I'm not going to argue that. I'm not saying he's bad just because he's a Nepo baby. But I am saying that head coaching experience in the high school obviously probably won't help you too much when you jump all the way to the NBA. And then on top of that, the only other head coaching experience he has since joining the NBA was in 2014 as one of the head coaches for the Minnesota Timberwolves Summer League team that season, and they went 2-4, and they got ranked 20th out of the 24 teams who competed in the Summer League that year. So definitely not great. And then even less great when you take in the fact that that Summer League team had Zach LaVine, Gorgie Dang, Shabazz Muhammad, and Glenn Robinson all on that roster. Now, Zach LaVine is probably the only big name out of the guys I mentioned, but the other guys I mentioned as well were all a good role player, solid multi-year NBA players. So, like, you would imagine they should have had a better record than 2-4 on that team, and to finish fourth worst in the entire Summer League is definitely not great. So, from looking at his only two head coaching experiences being the Summer League and a high school, I would say that's a little shaky at best, and I think he's quite underprepared to be a head coach on an NBA level team, much less an NBA playoff level team. Now, like, I don't think that he was going to make that big of a difference one way or the other. Like, I don't think the Nuggets were going to win the finals, but I don't even think the Nuggets might even get out of the first round because I think Ty Lue is one, going to be able to coach circles around this guy, and two, I just think the team and the Nuggets, like, what experience does he have being a leader? What experience does Adelman have at all in coaching a team? Like, he's not a guy getting in his first chance with a terrible team, trying to build them up from scratch where everybody has to respect each other because they all understand the situation they're in. No, this is a team with a multiple-time MVP, one of the best players of all time on it. Jamal Murray, a all-star point guard, one of the better players. Michael Porter Jr., a great player. Aaron Gordon, a vet in this league. And they have a lot of veterans sprinkled throughout this roster, all of which he probably doesn't fully have the respect of yet as a coach by any means because of his lack of experience coaching them. He probably hasn't had to be in a leadership role in a very long time. And even when he did, he was leading like 15 to 18-year-olds, not grown-ass men like he is now. So in my opinion, with him having to go against one of the better coaches in Ty Lue, with him going against a team that's going to be very similarly matched to him as far as talent for roster, I think it's going to be a pretty rough series for the Nuggets, and I wouldn't be surprised if they get 6 games out of it, but I do think that the Nuggets are probably going to lose in the first round, when I think if they would have kept Michael Malone, they probably would have at least got to the second, maybe even third round, and at their ceiling could have made the NBA Finals if everything went perfectly for them. But now I think that dream is pretty much crushed. But now that I've talked about how their playoff hopes have probably been completely derailed, the train is completely off the track at this point, now I kind of want to get into more of like what I think the future could hold and why I don't think that's very bright either. So going forward, they're going to most likely, like I said, lose in the first round or the second round of the playoffs. And then after that, they're going to have to look into hiring a new GM and a new head coach, assuming they don't keep Mr. Nepo. Okay, so when they're doing this, though, no matter who they hire, they're going to run into 2 problems. The first problem, and it's once again going to be more kind of directed to the head coach problem than the GM problem, but their first problem is going to be finding a head coach that is not only as good as Michael Malone, which is going to be very difficult, but also finding one that could be better than him and get along with him. And then, since you're hiring a new GM and head coach, you're now going to be having to rebuild new relationships throughout the entire front office because the head coach is going to want his own head coaching staff. The GM's probably going to want his own guys around him, like his own assistant GMs and things like that he trusts. So you're going to be rebuilding relationships, play styles, philosophy throughout the entire organization, and that's going to be a whole process in itself. And that is a process usually only bad teams have to go through, and that's because it's kind of a painful process, but it's easier to go through that when you're bad than when you're good. But now that they find themselves in this situation, I'm not sure that players like Murray, like Porter Jr., like Jokic are going to want to go through something like that because there's a very real chance if these relationships don't grow fast and the chemistry doesn't get there where it needs to be when the season starts, they could get off to a rocky start. And then they're one injury away from like being a play-in team or something, and then bad things could go bad very quickly because they're in a very delicate situation. Or even probably another more likely situation is that they either hire a bad GM or a bad head coach. It's hard enough to make this decision when you have a fully like normal front office or a fully normal coaching staff to find out who you want the next GM or the next head coach to be. But now they're having to do this both, so they're really going to have to rely on assistant GMs, on owners, on assistant coaches, things like that to make this decision. And that's never a great spot to be in. And I think they're going to find themselves in a very hard spot to try to find someone better than Michael Malone and get a good GM at the same time. It's going to be very difficult balancing those two things, and I think their future is probably pretty black, going like pretty dark if you ask me. I don't think it's going to be nice. I think there's going to be a lot of growing pains, and I think at best they get off to a rocky start next year, kind of find themselves midway through the year and become a mid-level playoff team. I don't think they're going to make the finals. I think they're going to at least take a year to fully integrate the new guys, and that is if they're actually effective at the job that they're supposed to do. So I think there's going to be a lot of growing pains going forward for this Nuggets organization, and I just want to know, what do y'all think? Do y'all think they're going to go through a lot of growing pains? Who do you think they should hire for these positions? Do you think it's going to end up well? How far do you think they can go to the playoffs? I want your thoughts in the comment section below. And like, point to like button, subscribe button, and that's the word to me, and I hope you have a blessed day, because I had a blessed day, so you need to have a blessed day. All glory to God. See you in the next video. Goodbye. Boo. Blah.